Football guys, it's the football guys. Sean O'Connell, Geoff Schwartz, happy to be back with you, talking some draft changes,
Yeah.
maybe still coming in the NCAA athletics world. And we'll get to a big fight. Well, a fight featuring one of the biggest names in the history of combat sports. I'm not going to bury the lead, but I'll tell you what I think about it.
I'm excited
Let's
to hear
start.
this.
Let's start with the draft, Geoff Schwartz.
Yes.
We did a show together on Friday. Obviously, the first round was in the books at that point. And then the bulk of the draft, the meat and potatoes, so to speak, finished over the weekend, the final 6 rounds of the 2024 NFL draft. And I just wanted to get your general takeaways, people that you thought were great values in those later rounds, maybe teams that you think did exceptionally well in filling out their rosters. Hit me.
Everyone gets an A because, Sean, they all got the players they wanted at the exact position they wanted them for the value they wanted them, and they were all on the board. Look, I think my takeaway is once you get past the first couple of rounds, Sean, it's really your favorite ice cream flavor, right? I mean, there's going to be guys that I thought were drafted too high. There's guys I thought were drafted too low. It just depends on what the team feels about a player. We saw like a guy like Troy Franklin from Oregon drop a couple rounds. I don't know. It happens, right? We saw guys get drafted higher than I thought they would, Sean. And to me, the overriding take is like you just have to trust based off of years of information. And sometimes these teams have new front office staffs, but you just trust like the Chiefs know what they're doing. The Ravens know what they're doing, right? The teams that have established, the ability to develop players, they probably know what they're doing. And you can look at every team and be like, Jalen Hicks was a big for the Chiefs. I thought was a big pickup in the 4th round. Yeah. I mean, obviously teams didn't feel high enough on him. Chiefs liked him, took him in the 4th round. So that's my takeaway is that when you get past the 3rd round, so the last day, the last 4 rounds, you have to trust that your staff and your front office or your favorite team can develop those guys because we don't know. Like, we don't know if those guys are going to be good or not.
You just said something that I want to go back to because there's a trust element here, very obviously. But you said you got to trust the years of information available, and that's where it gets interesting because we've seen guys drafted with 1 year of information available, effectively, right? We've seen Zach Wilson was drafted number 2 overall because of one really good year of 1 year of information that suggested he belonged there, right?
Yeah.
There were more than 1 year of information for him, but it was not all so universally positive as the COVID year, right? And that's where he got drafted. Yeah. And so that might prove to be a cautionary tale. You've got things on the other end of the spectrum where you've seen a guy for 3-4 years of a college career and he's looked great for that entire time, and then when he gets to the NFL, even though his performance in college was great and his measurables were great, he just doesn't hit necessarily the same way that you thought he would. And it's this sliding scale, and I don't want to just call out individual players. Apologies to Zach Wilson. But that's what I want to dive into just at least for a minute here is how much information needs to be available for you to actually trust it. Because now the transfer portal – and the crazy movement in college sports is going to make that consistent information even harder to come by because guys are bouncing around and people start in the FCS level and they end up at USC and you're like, okay, well, they looked great for the 1 year they were there, but is that sample size enough? How do you trust it?
Well, I was watching Kingsley Suamataia today, the BYU left tackle, because the Chiefs drafted him. I wanted to rewatch him. And I watched 3 halves of football of 3 different games. And I come away thinking nothing he does in that film is anything he'll do in the NFL. Like these college offenses and defenses sometimes, Sean, there wasn't one 3rd and 8 one-on-one pass rush rep that he had in the 3 halves I watched. It's just not an NFL offense. And I'm not saying BYU has to have an NFL offense. So you're drafting guys based off of traits, right? Traits. And then if your staff can develop those traits, right? When I mentioned the experience, like the Chiefs, for example, their offensive line coach has done a great job of developing all sorts of talent all sorts of. He had a guy from Canada that was a starter for them for many years. So I trust him to what?
I, I like how you throw out. He was from Canada. If you
Well,
can believe it, in Canada they don't produce large humans with good athletic traits.
How many Canadian offensive linemen are in the history of the NFL that didn't? He didn't play college football in the States.
No, I understand.
Also a doctor. Do you know that? Believe it or not. So they there was a kid drafted from out of British Columbia this year too, by the Lions, I believe. So like I trust Andy Heck, the Chiefs offensive line coach, to get him right. I'm not sure I trust that somewhere else. And that gets me to another point about the draft. I think it's important. And it's hard for sometimes even us to follow the game to really know if this is the way is the fit of the player to the program. We've never really talked about this till recently. I think it just as a general media, but it matters so much, Sean, where you go, more than maybe like what draft pick you are. For example, it's easy to do this about quarterbacks, right? Caleb Williams, great situation. Jay Daniels, okay situation. Drake May, terrible situation. No talent around him, right? JJ McCarthy, good situation. Good offensive line, good run game, good wide receiver, good coach, good defense. Bo Nix, not the best situation, right? Rebuilding roster, not as much around him. And then Michael Penix might not play until he's 28 years old, so we don't know about him, right? So, like, situation matters a lot, right? And so we talk about where these guys end up. And even though their college film might be something you're like, I don't see any NFL in this college film because they don't do that in college. So the traits-based drafting is even hard for me. There's a kid drafted by the Bears, 70th pick overall from Yale, a Yale tackle. I watched this kid play, Sean, and I was like, nope, 6th round pick, 7th round pick. NFL teams like the top 100 pick. I was like, oh. And so, like, it's just traits. You're like, he's a big kid. He moves well. And so teams that have figured this out have done a better job of developing talent than teams that are sort of stuck in maybe the old way of just, we have to see what's on film. And that's the only way that we're going to draft guys because you don't see it on film.
It's funny that you used Kingsley Sumatai as the example that you brought up because you go back to Thursday of last week before the first round of the draft. And, I vacillate between my national interest and I live in Utah, so being focused on where the Ute guys are going to go, where the BYU guys are going to go, where the Utah State guys are going to go. And I was kind of like fleshing out those ideas publicly. And the one pick I was so certain, the fit that I knew was going to happen, and I tweeted it out on Thursday. I said, you can book it now. The Chiefs are going to draft Kingsley. Because I know that Andy Reid loves BYU guys. I know that Andy Reid loves offensive linemen. And then you saw the call that they put out, and that was exactly what the GM said about Andy. But I know that staff at BYU. I know those guys. And even if they're not having Kingsley do during his years at BYU, of course, he was a transfer from Oregon, but he played his high school football like 4 minutes away from LaVell Edwards Stadium in Provo. So they knew what they had in that guy. And Andy talks to that staff, right? I mean, they invite him to events and things like that. And they knew that this was a freak. This was a guy who moves a little bit differently. This is a guy who's stronger than he's supposed to be. This is a guy that all those coaches were just like in awe of. And so I knew that Kingsley was going to be drafted by the Chiefs because the Chiefs needed a tackle. He is a tackle, BYU guy. And there's a certain amount of established trust that maybe the film sample size is not what he's looking for, but he can very readily access. Okay. But does he have the raw ability that Coach Heck can bring him in and mold him into what we need him to be? We probably won't ask him to play right away. And the answer to that question is yes, absolutely. So you knew they were going to, some people thought maybe a late first round pick, but you knew they were going to use a second or third round pick on Kingsley.
I was surprised he fell that far. I think part of it was there was that run on tackles early in the draft. And then second round was like corners and linebackers and then eventually got back to tackles. Sean, I believe 43 Pac-12 players were drafted this past year. And as much as me and you would love our conference to still be around, I think it's a little bit disingenuous to make the argument that the Pac-12 should be around because they have a bunch of draft picks in this class. Like that's not, it actually goes to show you, in my opinion, the Pac-12 has not done a good enough job to have this relatively happen on the regular. Like you can't go from 15 guys drafted to 43 and be like, yep, this is should have a TV deal now. Like if you did this for the last 5 years, yeah, that's a legitimate argument. But next year, look, right now, Washington has how many draftable players on their roster? I don't know, 0. Like, USC doesn't have a lot right now. Like this was a special year because everyone came back. And so the idea that this is another reason why the Pac-12 should be together, the answer is to me is no, that's not at all a reason why.
I'm going to push back on that because you're right. You can't use it as the only thing that establishes you as a conference who deserves a television deal. But the Big 12 and the ACC are producing guys on the same level to the NFL as the Pac-12 is. Not on a great year, but on an average year. They're kind of the same. And the ACC and the Big 12 have actually been chasing the Pac-12 in the last decade or so in terms of total guys and total overall producers at the NFL level. I mean, there was like 4 drafts in a row where the Big 12 was pushing single digits drafted, right? I mean, it was a bad situation. And they survived because of good leadership. They survived because of creativity. They survived because the fan bases in those towns care more, right? Because the ratings are better, because the investment by the business owners is better, because maybe you call it a truck stop conference if you want. I'm not going to say that, but their reaction to college football in that part of the country is significantly different than it was in the West Coast. And that sort of aloof nature of your fan base and the business communities that you needed to engage, like it doomed the Pac-12. It's not necessarily about the talent you're producing. It's not even about the games that you can win. It was about the leadership, and it was about the culture that was created over however many bad years of leadership. And that's what killed the Pac-12 conference. Would it have been better? Would you have been more guaranteed to stick around if you had 40 draft picks a year? Sure. 8 guys in the first round every single year? Yeah, sure, maybe. But if even with that kind of talent, the culture that exists on the West Coast in observing college football is not what these commercial partners, these television networks need, then nothing was going to save it.
Yeah. It still like hasn't hit me yet though that this is where we're at. I don't
sucks.
Ever will. I started thinking the other day about preparing for the Big Ten. I mean, I don't know if I'll be covering it. You might be the Big 12. I don't know what's going to happen, but I might just hire someone to like prepare me a big old like thick like Big Ten historical packet just so I'm aware.
You don't have to do that. You don't have to do that.
But
Phil
Sean
Steele puts out a great guide every single year. Pick Six previews. What about our guy from Pick Six?
I know,
previews?
but it's not really about that though. It's like we were so ingrained in the Pac-12, like we knew the 2 deeps, the 3 deeps, like that sort of matters, especially when you ask coaches about players. And I've made the mistake before of not knowing a 2 deep, not knowing where a kid transferred. I mean, do you remember Chip Kelly called me out one time? I made a comment about a running back. Said, no, that's my guy. I brought him in. I was like, sorry, coach. Sorry. Like just like knowing the play, like where the players come from. Like that's all things that we didn't have to worry about 5 years ago. Yeah. And it's not just, I'm fine with Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon, Washington, UCLA, and USC. It's the other schools. It's learning about the Maryland's roster and Rutgers roster and stuff like that. Which
no one's going to ask you to talk about Indiana at all. Okay,
except Indiana fans. They want to know about their new coach from JMU. So, oh no, I got to start. I feel like I need to prepare. I'm not prepared enough yet. Unfortunately, I don't know what I need to be there. Anything else NFL draft related?
No, look, you're right. Everyone is optimistic. Everyone's excited about what they got. I don't think we saw anything in the draft that's going to change my opinion of who's like a contender this year. I don't think that's what the draft is designed for the most part. You're not going to have an immediate impact that makes you a Super Bowl contender if you weren't already there, not with young players. But it's going to be fun to watch how some of these guys, especially because of our vested interest for the recent history of the Pac-12 conference, I really do want to see how some of these individuals work out. We looked at it and we said, wow, this is the most talented conference we've seen in the existence of the Pac-12, and now those guys are moving on. They've matriculated to the NFL, and the proof has to be in the pudding there as well, right? Because now they're playing against that elite group, like the best of the best of the best. Were they that in college? Yeah. Are they going to be that in the NFL? I'm always interested.
Yeah, and do you find yourself like following Utah guys more than other guys? I don't know if I find myself doing that with Oregon guys, to be honest.
I definitely do. Yeah. They're like, and it actually frustrates me when I see Utah guys that I have a particular, affection for or really think that can be something. I hate when I see them go to places where I don't want to watch them in the NFL. I don't like watching the Denver Broncos. I can't stand it. And the Denver Broncos keep adding Utah football players.
Jonah Ellis, yeah.
Jonah Ellis, he's going to have a hard time, man. That's he's either got to get smaller and play linebacker, or he's got to get bigger to maintain himself as a rush end. They got Devon Vele, a late round receiver. They always add these guys, and I'm like, I don't want to watch him. Cole Bishop went to Buffalo. I don't like watching the Buffalo Bills, man, but I'm getting used to it because they got Dalton Kincaid now. They obviously have Cole Bishop that I just mentioned, and they're a good team at least. That wasn't the case for a long time. So you don't like to see guys that you followed when they were college athletes go and fizzle out at the NFL level. So wishing for success for all of them.
I do feel that way a little bit with like JPJ going to the Raiders and Bo Nix going to the Broncos, where I'm like,
yeah,
Herbert's to the Chargers now. All the teams that I don't really want to win, but then again,
just the whole division. But at least you're gonna at least you're gonna watch with some interest because your favorite team, the Chiefs, engages with those teams in meaningful games.
And I have Patrick Mahomes to root for, so it makes it a little bit easier.
Just fixes everything for you.
What, by the way, so your NFL team is the 49ers.
Yeah.
Is your NBA team the T-Wolves?
No. I was born in Minnesota.
So you're the Jazz?
Kind of. I never really, when I was a little kid, I decided Patrick Ewing was my favorent player. Then I decided that I loved anyone who came out of Georgetown like Patrick Ewing, which was so weird. And so, I went from the Knicks after he was gone to the Heat because of Alonzo Mourning. And I never really bit down hard on an NBA team. So I follow the Jazz closest by default. Obviously loved the Warriors when I was living and covering things in the Bay Area. And I think in the NBA, I glom on to guys that are easy to root for. Yeah. And Steph Curry is like the ultimate guy who's easy to root for. So.
Right. I just saw a tweet about Anthony Edwards, and I thought to myself, I said, is Sean a T-Wolves fan? It's a big this is the first, I think, pro sports sweep for a Minnesota team in any sport ever.
Dude, the fact that the Timberwolves are actually a force to be reckoned with is such unfamiliar territory for the entire NBA that I don't think anyone's going to get used to it. And they are partially because of Rudy Gobert, who, even though he's awesome, he's a great hustle player. COVID. He started COVID, and he's French, so he's just this super villain. He's like the final boss for NBA fans who never lived in Utah. In Utah, you developed an affection for Rudy Gobert. Everybody else hates the guy, and all he does is hustle and play defense. 4-time defensive player of the year, probably.
I think next up it's Nuggets Timberwolves, right? It's a great series,
dude. And you know what's funny is we as American sports fans are slowly, I think, coming to the realization that the NBA is becoming a non-American league. The best players in the NBA right now, 6 of the top 10 are guys they're not Americans. And I don't know if people are comfortable with that, if that's something that we like in this country.
I mean, if you look at who's going to be left after this round, right? So you're going to the only one is Jokic, right? Because you look at the Timberwolves' best player or most electric player is Anthony Edwards, right? The Thunder is
he Canadian?
Oh, he's Canadian? Oh, no. I don't know. I have no idea. But, is he really?
I think he's Canadian.
Oh, wow. Well, that changes my opinion immediately. He's born in Atlanta, Georgia. So
never mind. Okay.
So it's I would have been surprised if that was the case. SGA, and you look at the other side with Tatum and whatnot. So, Giannis being out certainly hurts the Bucks. I doubt he comes back. But I've enjoyed NBA playoffs. We don't talk much NBA on anything we do, but NBA playoffs is when it's like the Knicks game the other day, man, with Brunson. Oh, it was so good to watch.
Didn't watch it.
Why not? What are you busy doing? Life?
Bath time. I got little kids, man.
My kids I just throw them in the shower. Go
Yeah,
shower. Get in the shower now.
I actually have to supervise. You can't put a 4-month-old in the shower and be like, get clean.
My kids don't understand like nakedness yet. Just there's no SGA is the Canadian. Someone just chimed in on the that's what it is. So
that's why
not Anthony Edwards. They don't understand being naked yet. Like they don't know what that means, and I'm curious like when that happens. Well, like they just walk around.
That's your job, bud.
My job? No, it's not my job. No, I'm not naked in front of the kids.
No, it's your job to let them know when they're too old to like just be casually naked. That's your job.
Okay. No, I think it's actually when Alex says he's done doing it. Right? Like, no, look, if he's 16, I'm like, okay, buddy, like, let's put it away. But he's 9. I feel like at some point, I think the kids will just realize, like, I don't want to be naked in front of my sister anymore.
You know what? You know what's funny is that, like, it depends on the family. It totally depends on the family. The house that I grew up in was, I guess, racked in enough Catholic guilt and just like deep-seated shame.
No one was ever naked?
Because like I'm not exaggerating, Geoff. I have no memory of seeing anybody in my family except for my baby brother, because he was like a baby when I was old enough to be forming memories. He's the only one I've seen naked that I have like a memory of. The only one in my entire family. Like my wife's family.
I don't remember my mom ever being naked, but
my wife's family, they're just like, oh yeah, we were just like, like you walk from the shower to like the laundry room to grab something. I'm like, no, you have to cover yourself for that. She's like, no, I would just run. I'm like,
that's my kids and my wife.
Yeah, my wife, like at some point it's got to stop.
It's got to stop when the kids. I'm telling you, it's gonna happen soon with Alex, where he's just uncomfortable about it.
Yeah,
and then we'll stop. Now I have not been naked in front of Emerson in like 4 years because she. We've
commiserated on this before.
We're not going to share this story again, but we're not like it's not going to happen. But yeah, so all right, back to maybe sports. Even though that Emerson story, I could have told that on the radio. You think maybe or not? That was like non-radio story to even tell for sound stupid.
Probably not. Probably
my daughter is just it's hard to even explain. All right, 2 college football things before we get to talk about a fight that's coming up soon. There's an article yesterday on The Athletic about Deion Sanders, and they reached out to 53 guys that had transferred out of Colorado.
Uh-huh.
And I was under the impression this was going to be like a hit piece on Deion. And I read the article, and it's not the best look for Deion, but I think it's a look into college football now, Sean, where schools are treating the roster like it's the NFL. If you read the article, Deion is basically treating the top half of the roster, the guys that are going to play, great. The bottom half doesn't care at all. And just tells them to leave. That's the NFL. It's exactly what happens in the NFL. There's no friendships. There's no getting to know players that you're going to cut. Like part of that was like, he never get to know me. Yeah, he's going to cut you. He figured out immediately. You're being released. I'm not going to pay attention to you at all. You're out of here. And this is how college football is. Other than maybe coaches are nicer about it to other players. But that's, I think, what takeaway was for me is Deion is running his team like you would see the last week of training camp in the NFL.
The fact that people are acting like this is a big change in college football is annoying to me, because this is how it always was, except now they can tell you to leave instead of just turning their back on you, completely ignoring you, and kind of forcing you to consider quitting because the writing appears on the wall at some point. I mean, we all love the Rudy story. We all know that in college football every year there's a half dozen or so guys that you see competing, on a playoff team, or you see this kid, he's the hope of America, started as a walk-on, was completely overlooked, and just grinded his ass off in the weight room and finally forced the coaches to notice him. Like that's the story that everybody wishes they had. It's so prohibitively rare. Unfortunately, right, you didn't have to deal with this. And so this is a foreign concept to a guy who ended up playing a decade in the NFL and had a great college career. Even other guys who were recruited, even guys who were on scholarship when I was a scout team walk-on piece of garbage for a Utah football team.
Oh,
like even those guys were not known to the coaches because they had been written off at some point during the season.
Yep.
And your mental bandwidth as a coach is so racked, and even more so now, is so racked by game planning, personnel management, this injury. How do we do that? I'm moving that guy from the offense to the defense because we need some help here. And they just stop even looking at who you are when you're sitting on the scout team. When you're like, I've come to grips with all of it because I finished my things at my career out at a smaller school where that wasn't the case. And I had a little bit of fun. And then I got to go have a different athletic career in combat sports. And it washed it all away for me. I still talk to guys, hang out with guys, am friends with guys who were in that same boat as me, playing for Urban Meyer as he was climbing the ladder to become one of the best coaches in America. And if all 12 of us walked up to him and said, have you ever seen my face before? Do you have any idea who I am? If I throw my name at you, if I tell you my name is Sean O'Connell, University of Utah, 2004, would you even register? And the answer is no. Like, Kyle Whittingham only knows who I am because I ended up in media, not because of the fact that I was a player on a team that he coached. If it was left to that, he wouldn't have any clue who I was. Because if you're below the line of demarcation, whether that's half of your roster or it's like the too deep or however the coaches handle it, you are nobody. And it's always been that way. But now, because the rules are different, instead of you being an anonymous nobody that they just hope kind of falls off and disappears, they tell you to kick rocks.
Absolutely. Two questions here about what you said and sort of the future of this. So one is, should coaches essentially be nicer when they cut players, right? Because that obviously, it sounded like Deion just kind of was a dick about it. There were stories about how they just shut off someone's access immediately, couldn't even get their stuff in the locker room, which, by the way, that's in the NFL. They just pack your shit up and send it to you, right? You don't get access to the locker room.
It's going to happen to you at a job at some point in your near future as well.
One was that they just took a bunch of guys off of a group text from the offensive linemen. That's how they knew they were like released. Okay, so
it's the passive aggressive ghosting, like you're somebody's 19-year-old girlfriend. I don't like that.
And then two, the article talked about this, something we've discussed for a long time. A lot of the portal players are not going upwards, Sean. They're going downwards, right? They're going down. And then there's nothing ashamed about going down to Group of Five or FCS.
It kind of is. It's okay.
But
it's okay. It's like, it's kind of okay to be ashamed of it.
Okay, you can be ashamed of it.
Yeah.
But what if a player just says no? Like, I'm not going anywhere. Like, they can stay on scholarship, right? Like, Deion can't force them to leave. He can force them to leave by being a douche to them and make it tough for them. But what if they was like, I like Colorado too much. I like being here in Boulder. I'm staying.
That would be a fantastic decision if you're at a great academic institution and you're just like, no, man, you put me on scholarship at Stanford. I'm staying here. I'm going to get my degree, and that's how it's going to be. As far as I know, the NCAA rules that were forced to change prior to this, right, prior to the transfer portal era, when we did the cost of living adjustment change, when they were trying to, like, one of the rule changes then was like, hey, you really got to guarantee these scholarships. And maybe it's a conference by conference or a school by school basis. But in a practical sense, is anyone actually going to do that? Do you know what kind of balls you have to have as a 19 or 20-year-old when your coach, who is like a godlike figure, is a dictator, comes to you and just says, I don't want you here anymore. You say, well, guess what, man? I like this scholarship. I'm staying. Yeah. He's just going to tell you, all right, well, don't come to practice. You're still on scholarship. we'll put you on a hardship waiver or something
Yeah.
like that. And if you're like, no, I'm coming to practice, he's going to be like, no, I'm going to lock you out of the locker room. But, I mean, that would be awesome if someone did it. I think that most, and I'm talking about like, there will be rare exceptions to this, but I think that most people want to keep playing college football, and they're going to go into the transfer portal, and they're going to be a little bit bitter about it. They're going to go into the transfer portal. They're going to be like, fine, Colorado doesn't want me. I'm going to go to USC, and USC is going to be like, nah. Like, oh, okay. Well, you know what? Texas. I'm going to go to Texas, and Texas is going to be like, no, sorry. Coach Prime didn't want you. We don't want you either. I'm going to go row the boat at the University of Minnesota.
We're rowing the boat.
And Fleck's going to be like, sorry, man. You don't look like Golden Gopher material to me. And at some point, you come to this realization, you're just like, oh, man, there's a reason why I didn't fit with what he wanted me to do. And there's some guys that the coaches are going to be wrong about, and they're going to go somewhere else, and they're going to excel. But a lot of these guys, like the coaches are smart, man, and you're 19 or 20, and your ego doesn't allow you to be like, he's correct. I'm not good enough to play here. I'm not fast enough. I'm not big enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not whatever. So I'm going to go there. I'm going to go play at UTSA. It's hard to do. And I've had this conversation with players. I've had this conversation with coaches. I've had this conversation on radio or podcast or whatever many, many times. Like, it's one of the hardest things that you can hear or you can feel, because back in my day, you didn't hear it, that you're just like, hey, you're not as good as you thought you were. Not even close. That's one of the toughest things for someone who's so deeply ingrained as a football player in their own mind, when you have to realize, like, I'm actually not that good. I'm not as good as I thought I was. Yeah. And then you can make more informed decisions when you realize it. But the realization is depressing as hell. And you're probably going to cry, and you're probably going to be bitter about it. And the best way to manage that is to start punching other people in the face for a living.
That's what you did. The rule has changed that you can, if they ask you to transfer, basically, you can remain on scholarship but not play anymore, right? So you'd have to honor the scholarship?
Yeah, there he goes.
Everyone wants to play, though, right?
I mean, everyone wants to play, but maybe you realize if you're at Vanderbilt or Stanford or whatever, you're just like, I'm one of the thousands of NCAA athletes that goes pro in something other than sports. So I'm going to get this degree.
Yeah, I think it's hard at that age to make the decision, especially when it's kind of forced at you, not you deciding to do so.
Also, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but also, like, Division I football is not fun, even for guys who are really good. It's not fun in the way that, like, high school is fun, right?
No.
Like, I mean, Urban Meyer said to us, like, straight up, just like, this isn't supposed to be fun. It's like, what? It's not? Like, it is a sport. It's a game. It's not supposed to be fun. But, like, yeah, it's not fun in the same way.
No.
If you transfer down the ladder, not like FCS football, but if you go to, like, a D3 school, one of my very best friends, he went to a D3 school in Beloit, Wisconsin, Beloit College.
Nice.
Ended up being a 4-year starter there. He played defensive end. He was the punter. They would have him run some, tight end sometimes. It was fun. He went and played, and it was fun. And he loved it, and he was just like, dude, it was a blast. It was awesome. And you're in your own little microcosm, so you're competing for a conference championship that for you feels super important, that the media and the overall college football world is just like, who gives a bleep?
Yeah.
Like, what, you're basically at a JUCO, but that's not how you feel when you're in the situation. So again, it's a realization that oftentimes comes too late, but big time college football is a business. It is transactional. It is not what high school football was. And if you just play football because you love football, you can love football at a lower level. You got to take the hit to the ego.
Not going to lie, Beloit's much bigger than I thought it would be on the map.
Geoff loves when you mention any obscure place or place he's never been. He just immediately goes to the maps. He finds, like, restaurants that are there.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I like stadiums too. I'm looking for the Beloit College football stadium here.
All right.
on the campus. But Beloit, not I know. I just thought you said small Midwestern town. I just thought Beloit
Yeah.
would be.
It is a small Midwestern town.
It's not that small.
I mean,
There's like 2 towns connecting too, so it's a little bit more. But
it's Division III football. It's not that big. Okay.
nonetheless, let's move it along here. Pete Thamel reported yesterday the NCAA is close to setting up some sort of structure to pay the players. And Sean, I don't know if we're ready to talk about how that might not be a good idea.
I'm ready to talk about how that might not be a good idea. You and I have been talking about this for months, how it might not be a good idea.
What are they going to do to make everyone happy? The answer is nothing. Because here's the thing, guys. The sports that make the money for your school are football and basketball. We know that. And some basketball programs make no money for your school. Every now and then you get Iowa women's basketball. It makes money. But obviously moving forward, we'll see how much money. I don't know how they're going to spread the wealth around between all other 30 programs on campus, Sean. Like it doesn't. There's no way they can do that, and so you're just going to pay the football players who already have NIL deals. And that's going to lead to lawsuits. That's going to lead to cutting programs. It's going to lead to everything. The NCAA should have done this 7 years ago, 10 years ago, and we wouldn't be in a situation where there's no rules whatsoever.
And by the way, you know who, like, paying Caleb Williams whatever USC has to pay, right? The comp salary, the unionized salary, is going to be undercompensation for him, and it's going to be drastic, incredible overcompensation for the other guys that I was just talking about. The guys that were in that Athletic article talking about Dion, you thought he was mean before. You know what it's going to look like when he's like, you cost me $100,000. You're costing the University of Colorado $87,000 for the year because we have to pay you now. You are terrible, kid. Get out of here. You're fired. Like that. It's such a bad idea. And by the way, you are sacrificing, if this happens, in some ways, you're going to eliminate the sort of cultural status of football and basketball players on campus. And maybe in some places that's a good thing. But instead of being, kind of this centerpiece and you're part of this engine that drives the entire athletic department, and there's, a lot of status that comes with that. Instead, people are going to be looking at you going, hey, yeah, fat ass, you're the reason why I don't have a soccer scholarship here.
Yeah.
You're the reason why my career is over and I no longer get to play a sport that I love, why I can't chase an Olympic dream while I swim for Cal, whatever. I don't like you, okay? Mr. Fourth string tight end who's making $87,000 or whatever the number ends up being. It's a terrible, terrible idea. It's going to cost your entire school, your entire university culture, other teams. You can't do it.
Also, does this lead to players being unionized? Which I was part of a union. I liked it. It helped in the NFL, but it's very divided, right? We had 1,700 players, very divided. The last vote was like 50 votes in between for the CBA.
Well, good thing is you only have to get 30,000 college football players to agree.
And so I don't know if paying them is the answer, Sean. We talk about the sort of the free market of this, and we're seeing with NIL, we're getting some of that free market to be part of the sport now. And does the backup, center on the men's basketball team, on top of a scholarship, by the way, that's worth $200,000, get a salary too? I don't know.
Well, the other thing about it is when you make them paid athletes, they're no longer student athletes because you're going to be hiring and firing them the same way that the NFL does. And that means you're not going to honor the scholarships. There's no incentive for a university to be like, why do I owe Geoff an education? Why do I owe Geoff Schwartz an education now? He's not doing anything for us. You already fired him from the football team.
Yeah.
He's going to play for Washington instead.
I do think there's going to be a time, we've talked about this, where we're going to have this breakaway of football that just becomes a minor league where they're no longer the student part of it. It's just football, just minor league. Teams are you license the name Oregon Ducks or Utah Utes, but they're really just minor league football players.
Yeah.
We'll get there someday. I'm curious if there's going to also be like another team in Oregon still, that people that want to get an education. But we might get to a point where there is this, like, we see NBA, there's the overtime league, there's the Ignite League. Like, we might see that in football.
What you're talking about is the destruction of college athletics. You're talking about the destruction of college football. You're talking, because guess what happens when you tell everyone, these Oregon Ducks, it's a 53-man roster of guys who are professional football players, but they're just not that good. They're not as good as the NFL players. We know what that looks like. We see that it's happening right now. The United Football League or the XFL or we know what it looks like. We know what Arena League football was. We know what minor league baseball is. If you pay attention to European sports, you know what second level soccer is. And you know what like the feeder leagues are. It's a good system over there, right? They figured it out. But the thing that doesn't get acknowledged is that if you're a big fan of Serie A in Italy, you're not watching Serie B. You're not. There's not corporate sponsorship dollars, and people aren't packing stadiums to watch the B-level teams. Just like minor league baseball in America, even though it's this exact system that might be created in football, it's not sellout crowds. It's a gimmicky, like, we have cool uniforms. We have Star Wars night at the park. It's fun. I like it. I love going to minor league baseball games. You know what I actually don't do at minor league baseball games?
Watch baseball.
Pay attention to what's happening. Like, I just don't. I was listening to a minor league baseball game the other night because I like doing that, like a weirdo. And Max Scherzer was on rehab assignment, and he was pitching against the Salt Lake Bees. And I was just like, oh, wow. That's really crazy that they're playing against Max Scherzer. Like, something like that happens, you're going to pay attention for 8 games. But that's what you're going to do to college football? Yeah. It's a bad idea.
I watch the game because I don't want my kids to get hit with a ball. That's basically well, I guess they have all the fencing up now, right?
The nets now.
I'm going Saturday.
They bubble wrapped all of us.
I think we're going Saturday night to watch the Knights play. It's the White Sox AAA team. It's funny because the White Sox can't score any runs in the major leagues, but their minor league team can bat very well. It's a kind of a conundrum that they have right now.
Called up soon.
But I love the minor league. My kids love the sound effects, the Dippin' Dots, the giveaways.
It's all great, but it is nothing like the atmosphere that you get at college football games. And the reason that atmosphere exists is because you feel some type of attachment, camaraderie, community with players who are going and playing for your alma mater.
Right.
They're student athletes, and you were a student at that university at one point, and you're talking about money being the catalyst that strips away all the things that have made college athletics important to us in the past. And if you do this, Pete Thamel is reporting on it. If you do this and you pay players, all of the people who've been saying this NIL thing and the transfer portal, they're ruining college athletics, they get to be right.
Yeah.
Because then college athletics is ruined.
Yeah. I'm with you. I agree. All right. Jake Paul, Mike Tyson. Sean, the fight is set. Tyson is an underdog.
Yeah,
I'm going to bet on Mike Tyson in this fight. I have to bet on a round 1 knockout, basically. That's what I have to wager on. Mike Tyson, round 1 knockout. Gets to round 2 or 3. He ain't making it. Just because that's what I want to see. I'm going to wager on I'll put $10 on it. Like, just
all right. Well, that's what everyone wants to see. That's what everyone is going to be talking about leading up to this fight. We're going to place a $10 wager. You can put your $10 down on Mike Tyson in the first round. I'm going to give you a $10 wager that this fight ever even happens.
Why?
Mike Tyson, when this fight is scheduled, is going to be 58 years old. 3 years ago, Mike Tyson was walking with a cane. We've all seen the 7-second training videos of Mike Tyson being like super scary looking for a 58-year-old guy, right? Go watch Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr., which I don't think it was a pro bout. I think they figured it out as an exhibition match, which is a couple years ago now. Roy Jones Jr. is younger than Mike Tyson, right? Was always smaller than Mike, faster, and both of them looked like exactly what they are. Dudes who were once great in boxing, who should not still be boxing as professional competitors. The idea that you're going to trot out a guy who's almost 60, who has a history of mental instability and substance abuse and problem after problem after problem, and you're going to put him out there with a 28-year-old kid who's been on steroids for however long, gets all of the attention, all of the training, all the nutrition, everything he needs to actually pursue a pro boxing career. Just because he started as a YouTuber, people are just like, Jake Paul's nothing. Jake Paul is a 200-pound dude that trains 3 times a day, every day, to be a good boxer. And you're going to put him in there against a 58-year-old great? It's not going to happen, Geoff. At some point, wisdom is going to prevail. Some doctor is going to be like, Mike didn't pass his EKG. Mike can't do this fight.
Tail the tape.
Don't.
Okay. Jake Paul 6'1", Mike Tyson 5'10". Jake Paul has a 5-inch longer reach. They're both Jewish because their stance is Orthodox. I didn't know that.
That's what it means. Yes.
But
what's your stance, Orthodox?
I just love the record. So Jake Paul 9-1, 6 KOs. Mike Tyson 50-6, 44 KOs.
Yes.
No draws. Debut 2020 for Jake Paul, Mike Tyson 1985. But here's my favorite part. Current streak. You ready? Jake Paul 3 wins. Mike Tyson 1 split draw.
Dude. Okay, so you've been around these guys. When you talk to or you see an athlete who was in their prime, superhuman. These guys you're just like, whoa. I remember watching Brian Urlacher. He was a god on the football field.
Yeah.
I remember watching Randy Couture fight in the UFC, and Randy's still in great shape. You see guys that were like unbelievable NBA players, like like Clyde Drexler or somebody like that, and you see them when they're in their late 50s, and you're like, oh, look, he walks kind of funny now.
Yeah.
Geoff, I almost called you Jake Paul. Geoff, I have been around Mike Tyson several times in the last couple of years. I saw him a couple months ago in Riyadh. We had him hand the belts to the winners in our Champs versus Champs card. You know what Mike does when he's standing next to you and you say, hey, Mike, you know what he does? He doesn't do this. He doesn't turn his head. He goes,
oh, I've been there before.
The old man, like my spine doesn't really work anymore.
Oh, I've been
Mike
there.
Tyson has that, and it's totally okay because he savagely destroyed his body for our entertainment for 2.5 decades. So it can't happen.
Wow, Tyson fought in 2005, but as you mentioned, Roy Jones in 2020, and then hasn't fought since. Some of these names, I looked up some of these guys, man. Oh, it's a rough go of it. I love that Jake Paul fought Nate Robinson.
Yes.
And Ben Askren.
Nate Robinson was like the first one we paid attention to. It was Nate Robinson, and people were just like, oh, Nate's like an elite athlete. Nate could have been an NFL player.
Correct, yeah.
And decided to go to the NBA instead. Like, he's a 2-sport mega athlete star. And Jake was just like, okay, well, this is a different animal. We're fighting.
If you had to make a wager on this, who are you taking to win the fight?
Jake Paul, I think by decision, because I actually think Jake is going to
How many rounds are they going?
I think it's going to be 8 rounds, 8 2-minute rounds.
And you think Tyson makes it 8 rounds?
I think that. You know when a fighter carries another fighter? I think that there's probably an agreement behind the scenes already.
This is rigged? No way.
Okay.
Sean, this is rigged? This is rigged for entertainment.
I'm gonna get. I got to be careful because I don't want to get some lawsuit against me. I don't want to be accused
You
of
need a
libel.
Netflix special that is a Netflix special between a 58-year-old boxer and a 28-year-old celebrity boxer has a little bit of entertainment value in it. No way.
So you're looking at Jake Paul's record, right?
Yeah, 9-1, 9-1.
Okay. You know who Anderson Silva is?
Yeah.
Okay. So Anderson Silva, prior to boxing Jake Paul, who was 6-1 at the time, Anderson had a real boxing fight against Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. And Anderson was a 40-something-year-old MMA guy, and people were just like, "There's no way he's winning that fight," and he mollywopped the actual boxer. And people were like, "Oh, geez, Anderson still got it." And then Anderson magically just fell off all the way down to the depths of nothing when he fought Jake Paul. If you watch, there's moments in the fight where Anderson Silva is landing combinations and then he kind of stops. It's like, okay, get your shit together, kid. And then he's like,
the conspiracy is in.
It's not a.
Are you how much would it cost for you to have to go to this? It's in Dallas on July 20th.
Oh, I would go work it if they want me to work it.
No, I mean like as in the crowd as a fan.
Oh, you could not. I wouldn't pay $1 for a ticket to this.
What if your daughter somehow influenced by the fight? It's like, Daddy, I want to go to watch the Tyson Paul fight.
You think I'm bringing my? She will be 5 at the time. You think I'm bringing my 5-year-old daughter around the crowd full of degenerates that think that it's a good idea to spend their hard-earned money on this?
Can you imagine that crowd outside of like the corporate people that are there? That's a crowd that likes fighting.
I'll tell you what. This crowd is going to be the most cantankerous mix of old school Mike Tyson fans who are guys that are in their 50s plus who want to see the last flash of glory of Iron Mike knocking the shit out of this punk kid. Those guys, and they're all going to be riding up in their BMWs, and a couple of them are going to have Lamborghinis. And then on the other side
Gen Z
is going to be just a bunch of Gen Z weirdos.
Oh, like Dan Lynch's just hanging out there.
Just Dan Lynch is far more level-headed than like the hardcore Jake Paul Gen Z fans. Like I admire what the Paul brothers have done. They've turned themselves from being like YouTube weirdos into moguls, big-time businessmen. Logan Paul is a WWE star now. He's like an incredibly talented guy. Jake is a talented boxer on the rise. And then this little freak sideshow that I don't think is actually going to walk. I don't think this fight actually happens. I think Mike gets pulled out for a medical reason at some point.
And who steps in? Sean O'Connell.
Probably Hassan Riddick Jr. I don't know.
How many months would it take you to get ready if they called you? It was like, hey man, Tyson dropped out. You got to go. How many months?
I would take 2 months and I would do it. I'd be happy.
Would you win?
Yeah, I think I would win.
Well, in your stance, it wouldn't be orthodox. You'd be a left-leaning Jew.
No,
a left-handed Jew.
It's such a stupid joke. Why is it so funny to me?
I'm just glad that Jews are getting some support right now. It's rough out here in these college campuses, man.
Well, I don't want to get into that.
No, we don't have to. There's a channel for that. It's not this one.
This channel. It's not even. We're not on the channel anymore.
I did see a tweet that was pretty funny from you follow 3-year Letterman. He just is kind of like a trollish account.
Yeah,
It was something about like he took the 24/7 recruiting rankings and was like, the better you recruit, the less likely you are to have a Hamas encampment on your campus. It's just so bad. It's so bad. Oh, it's just like
was it University of Florida that just like expelled them all, kicked them all out?
I honestly can't pay attention to all of them. I'm like I saw the one at UCLA and
I think it was. I think that it was. I think the University of Florida made an announcement that they just like went in and cleaned up shop and were just like, okay, you're out.
Yeah, we're not. It's young kids. I'm all for expressing what you want to express, but I
exited my support of the on-campus protest in general when several years back now, there was a protest happening on Cal's campus in favor of segregation on the campus.
What?
They wanted safe spaces. It was during that era.
In the trees outside of Memorial Stadium?
They wanted safe spaces for each individual minority to have its own safe space. And it was like, we Latinos want a building that is just for us. And we African Americans want a building that is just for us. And it was either the university vice president or a provost or some kind. I remember very vividly watching. They were linking arms across campus, blocking students from walking to class in solidarity, demanding segregated safe spaces. And some high-ranking official on campus who happened to be part of the original civil rights movement that had some serious grassroots beginnings in the Bay Area, came down and was just like, what are you idiots doing? We fought dangerous conditions for real decades ago in order for all of you to be able to have equal treatment in these spaces. And now you're trying to segregate. And I was just like, yeah, college campuses are full of what I was when I was younger.
Yeah.
A bunch of people who think they know everything who actually don't know shit about how the world works.
Oh, yeah. I agree. Again, I'm for their right to silently, not really silently protesting, but just to protest. I mean, that's within your right. But yeah, the message they're sending, the stuff from UCLA is bad. It's not great anywhere really. But I thought that was just a funny tweet about the whole thing. That you sometimes humor to get you through it is the way to do it, Sean. All right, guys, we learned that 2 fighters are Orthodox Jews today. That's my takeaway.
That's your takeaway. Ignore the draft stuff, the NCAA stuff. Mike Tyson and Jake Paul are both wearing a prayer shawl. So
I'm going to watch the fight. I never watch fights. I'm just going to watch it just to spite you.
That's messed up. We can't get you to watch. I'm going to campaign for the PFL to come to Charlotte, North Carolina.
I will come. Maybe we'll see. Depends on the day and time and how I'm feeling that day. There's no guarantee I'll show up.
I'll get Meredith VIP tickets, and then you have no choice but to attend.
If you give her like VIP tickets, if I tell her like this is the thing that everyone's going to and everyone's going to show out in their best outfits, and like you have to dress a certain way, she'll be like, well, it's going to cost me, but will find a way to like be the best dressed. And why is there no PFL in Charlotte? No one, you don't like the Carolinas around here?
We're 5 years in, man. We haven't been able to hit every American city yet. Come on.
Well, that's why you're not. No, I was going to say something mean, but I don't know why. There's no reason to say anything mean.
Go ahead and cut down my startup company that I'm trying to help build.
I try to watch as much as I can. I am. The other day I told you I think I texted you. I was in I put it on and I was like, oh, that's Sean, and my kids were like, oh, there's Sean. So yeah, I watch when I can.
Yeah, and then your wife said, "Who's Sean?"
That it's just there's no explaining her to people. It's great. All right, everyone. I think we did enough. We'll be back later this week. We'll talk. I guess we'll start getting ready for the season, man. Some NBA playoffs, maybe.
NHL playoffs. Let's go.
NHL playoffs. MLB.
Yeah, we're
the Derby.
One of us lives in a hockey town now.
We already have a hockey team here, AAA. Thank you very much.
That doesn't count.
I am doing a podcast today on the Kentucky Derby, so big horse fan this weekend. I know 2 of the horses, so we'll see how it goes. All right, everyone.
All right, take it easy, buddy.
Bye, guys.